I've always been amazed that we pay so much attention and spend a great deal of money on old houses, which usually, we call them historical buildings, usually no more than 100 years old. Whereas we don't consider trees that are 4, 5, 600 years old of the same importance. And they're still alive. Those old houses aren't even alive anymore, but they're still alive. And I found it interesting to consider what those trees might have seen during their 5 or 600 years of age. The very first concern that I had children going to school. The road, especially South First Street, was finally being paved, but no sidewalks installed, and I thought this might be an outstanding opportunity just to ask them put in sidewalks. Big deal, you know. Well, little did I know how difficult it is to get anything done without ordinances and permits and funding and Lord knows what all. Roy Butler, the mayor at the time, had just been to Russia and was all eager to duplicate the kind of green belts that he has seen in Moscow, have something like this for Austin also. And we also learned that his favorite poem was I think that I shall never see a poem lovely as a tree, the very well-known poem by Joyce Kilmer. So I was beginning to learn the ways of elected positions, and this also appears. The poem appears on the brochure that we published in large quantities in 1973. What started it off is one particular event where there was some of us talking about a big old tree down on South First and Ben White that was about to be cut down in order to have more room to park cars for a store that was about to be opened up down there, which shall remain nameless. Somebody suggested, why don't I just go down and look at it? I don't know why they asked me, but they asked me. So I went on down with the tape measure, and the tape measure didn't even make it halfway around the tree trunk. So I went home and got a string and made a knot in it every foot, so I would still know how big the circumference is likely to be. And then put that string around, went back, put the string around the tree. We do have the measurements of the treaty oak. We know how old the treaty oak is likely to be, but we have trees here that are much older, and we assume, or are larger, and we assume they're also older. It is a little difficult to determine because you don't know what the roots are resting on. Is there maybe some underground water or something, in which case they would grow faster. We have a number of trees in Austin that are much larger than the treaty oak, and one of them is the oak tree at the corner of Breaker Lane and I-35. You can see it from the road. And that was about to be cut down to create more parking spaces for a new Safeway store. And this was in 1972 or 3, so it's a long time ago. And the contractor called me, asked for my help to try to save it, and a bunch of neighbors were really upset about the fact that there was even such a thought of cutting down a tree that old. I remember I got one phone call real early at 6 o'clock to come on down and to watch the trees being cut down to make room for the urban center. Huge. I have slides of it. I took some pictures real quickly. The saws couldn't even get into the trunks because they were so enormous. It was much more a matter of the members of the city council that were elected would be retired developers, and there was getting to be a change. I think it was nationwide also, greater interest in environment, more women and more minorities. And our city council was a real big shock to the establishment, because here were 3 women, myself with a foreign accent. That was just about the last blow, I think. And the environment playing a part. And the mayor at the time was a young man, who was about 30 years old and pretty brash at times, very smart but pretty brash and Jewish. And all these things came together and were very hard to swallow for a lot of people. And they would look at the dice and see 3 women, and it's just one, then a black man and a Latin American man, and this was all a whole new experience, and it took some. And they threatened that they would impeach us all for no reason. I would impeach us, just on general principle. We would have to come on the money. We would have to come up with in order to have a Think Trees Week, where we would encourage the students and citizens to look around and measure their own trees if they have large ones, and then call a certain phone number at the city hall and tell us about their trees. And this became a project that all school children were involved in. A friend of mine, a professor from St. Edward's University, agreed to for a historical marker, just to list what all this tree may have witnessed in his life. And if this tree would be a couple 100 years older than the treaty oak, it means it has been around here 700 years ago. The reason I found that I thought this might be a good time to ask the City Council for some money in order to help us celebrate or introduce a celebration of Think Trees Week to coincide with Arbor Day. And I believe we're talking about 1974 or even 3 to celebrate Think Trees Week, and in order to get people to think about trees a little more, not just consider them as something that's in the way if you want to do some construction. And it was quite an event, this Think Trees Week. The year or 2 later was bicentennial, so we made it coincide with the bicentennial to publish a registry of those biggest trees that had been listed. And also a medallion. I've thought if we have medallions on old houses, we should have medallions on old trees. I should give credit to the members of the environmental board, which had, and the whole environmental department, which had been created only fairly recently, because they did a lot of the work, and the Parks Department especially did a lot of the work, because all the trees that had been submitted, we had to go for 2 days, morning to evening, with a tape measure to remeasure all those trees and then put them in the order of size and species, and then determine which sequence they would go, which were the biggest ones. We persuaded the gas company, the Southern Union Gas, I think they called it at the time, to use it as an insert. Tell about finding the largest trees in people's backyards or any place else. And but it took a lot of persuading, because they all told us, well, this is so much trouble and whatnot. But we succeeded. We got it into everybody's home. There was notes about it, articles about it in the newspaper, and then we also encouraged the kids to write the essays, and then pictures of trees, and then we would get together and pick out the nicest, most exciting pictures. Well, how can I talk or even think about City Council, my time on the City Council, without thinking of the leash law? Not a day passed that we didn't receive a complaint in the mail from some of the citizens that please do something about securing dogs so they don't run around freely and present a real danger to a lot of people who like to walk and kids going to school. In fact, I was giving a talk in one of the elementary schools over in East Austin on some topic or another, and I just asked them who's raised their hands who's ever been bitten by a dog, and every hand went up. So every little kid there, I don't know, second, third grade, uh, every little kid had once upon a time been bitten. And there was one reason that I found that it was going to be more important to have something like a tree ordinance in order to get people to think trees, to acquaint themselves with the value of trees and really don't want to cut them down. Of more trees, and the city has grown, so more and more trees have been incorporated, and we've been in hopes that we could publish a second volume, or in addition to the first volume, especially since we had comments literally from around the country of how wonderful such a book is, and they did a beautiful job of it. The work on the city council, I was really excited about it because I could do a lot of good and I learned a lot. I never missed a meeting. I went through the 2 years, and I felt that I was not elected in order to just have a ball and not pay attention to what I was supposed to be doing. That's not what I got hired on for, and I never missed a meeting, council meeting. Anyone who called had his phone call answered on the same day, and done what I could or what my office could accomplish in order to remedy a problem that had come along. I took this very seriously.